Hello, so the video you just saw was a task I gave myself where I had to create or come up with a fake commercial for this soda brand with a couple of boundaries. My idea in the beginning and why I started the project was that I wanted to show that you can create a fairly advanced looking commercial, but using simple techniques and very few objects. I want to talk a bit about my process of coming up with ideas, emulating a client project, giving yourself constraints, all using simple techniques, and hopefully we'll end up with something cool for your portfolio. So let's begin. My 5 main objects was the lime, lemon, soda, ice cubes and straws. And when I say that I use simple techniques, for the most part that is really true. You can get really far with dynamics and cloners. But before getting too much into the technical part of the project, I want to talk a bit about the ideation process, the client brief or parameters and qualities I gave this fake soda brand. I feel like this process is a bit overlooked sometimes on YouTube, where there's often a strong focus on the technical side of things, which I can appreciate, but I feel like this is something I would like to have known when I started learning about motion design. Part of what I want to talk about in this video is about giving yourself constraints. Whether you get it from a client or you give it to yourself on a personal project, I believe that it helps to hone in on getting you a stronger concept. The label design is something I struggle a bit with. I'm not a graphical designer. If I didn't know that before, I definitely know it now. But after a couple of tries, I got something I didn't hate. And now that I had my label, I knew a little bit more about the feeling that this project should betray. Or at least I could write down some feelings or specific vibe that I would like to capture. These feelings and vibes or the mood could be something described in the client brief, where they describe a certain mood or might have some reference images. The client may not know exactly what they want, so getting information like this is key to creating a good concept and solve a creative problem. As motion designers, we are also problem solvers, and sometimes the client may not know exactly what problem they want solved, so we will have to dig deeper and find out what it is by asking questions. The more we know about the specific problem, the more constraints will appear, but this will actually end up being a very good thing, because this will, if we stick to some of these constraints or all of the constraints, we'll make sure that we're steering the project in the right path. Okay, moving on from that little rant. As always, I created my beloved mind map. I wasn't particularly systematic with this one though, but it's just a way to have my thoughts down in a visual manner where I can systemize it a little bit more. As you can see, if you look at the mind map, I like to do a bit of an association game. For example, I wrote down summer as a vibe/feeling, and then I search in my mind for what I associate with summer, in this case beach, which then translate to the movement of water and so on. I think you know how an association game works. When you have these associations to the product, the customer or the end user, you're starting to build a world, or at least the first building blocks that will help you later on when you're starting to design your scenes. I personally believe that coming up with ideas and these associations is one of the most important things becoming a better motion designer. I know that's a big statement, but I feel like it will help your brainstorming process immensely. Oftentimes when working on a project like this, you would probably have a storyboard, but in this case I did a whole bunch of R&D shots and actually only ended up using about half of the scenes I had created. And then you can quickly think, Meldis, so you wasted a ton of time and half of the client's money? And yes I did. No, but I believe it worked out for this project, and it made it better, I think. Since my scenes were supposed to be a bit more abstract and sell more a feeling than tell a sequential story, I think it paid off. Because I could sort out some of the bad ideas, or at least put together what seemed to be a better fit visually. So sometimes if you have the time to play more around and learn, this is often where you innovate and come up with new techniques and creative solutions. And it's fun, so I also needed to remind myself that this is a personal project, so I'm allowed to push the fun pedal a bit more. A small note is that I didn't just play aimlessly around, I did create all of these with some intention towards creating a concept or a story. You can always create something beautiful, but having a strong concept is more important, I would say. Not saying that I had particularly strong concept with this one, but at least intention was there. So remember, as motion designers, we are part-time storytellers, so I think it's important to tell a story, even if it's a small one. So as I said, no storyboards for this one. But I wrote down a bunch of ideas to scenes that I thought would be cool. Some had detailed descriptions, other more loose concepts. After I had written down enough ideas, I jumped into Cinema 4D and just started creating. The process of creating some of these shots were quite fun, but after working on the first one, I could quickly see the project would continue forever if I didn't change something. I simply spent too much time on it when I didn't even know if I would use it in the final piece. Which is why I then used this hourglass or half hourglass, so I would give myself 30 minutes to try to come up with a concept from one of the written down ideas. It didn't have to be perfect after 30 minutes, but it meant that I had a scene where I could quickly see if an idea in my head would work, and if it did, I could adjust and add the details, and if I didn't like it, I would just go on to the next one, and this saved me a bunch of time. As I talked about in the beginning, most of these scenes were created with simple techniques. I basically used the same technique for creating these 3 scenes. I used a cloner with a dynamic tag on, some as a collider, and a soft body tag with the setting made of clones, and that's basically it, and then I just played around with the settings. Let's talk a bit about one of the concepts. If we take a look at this scene where the soda is flying through the middle and the other sodas are turning, the idea with this one was that our product is something we want to follow, so the straws are turning toward the main soda is sort of a metaphor for people turning their head towards something. The execution was super simple. I reused assets from the other scenes, and the animation is just 2 keyframes. All the sodas are turning with a plane effector, which is a child of the main soda. A scene that didn't end up in the final was this one, where lemons and sodas roll down some geometry. The creation of this is pretty simple, and if I used it and were to animate it, I just used dynamic tags and colliders again. If you need to be super specific using the dynamic tab, it might be a bit harder to art direct, but for my scenes it worked perfectly. Another scene where I used the dynamic tag, in this case together with an emitter. This allows you to have a lot of movement without any keyframes. It can save you a lot of time and can result in a sort of advanced looking scene. In this scene, the emitter is inside of the soda can, shooting out limes, lemons and ice cubes. You get a lot of random and interesting movement for free using a setup like this. I could continue to talk about the specific scenes, but this is more about the principle of using your 3D softwares of choice, simple tools or the tools they have built in to create something that looks more than it actually is, or the work behind it. And it's not to be lazy. It's just that maybe you have a project where you don't have so much time, so I think it's a way you can be really effective. Just a short note on the music, which played a huge role since I found it very early in the process and edited the whole sequence to fit the music. It sort of decided the pace of the piece, and it adds a ton of the overall feel to the project, I think. Looking back at the project, there's obviously things I would like to change and plans that I had that didn't work out, but that's all part of the process. This isn't perfect, nor did I set out to make it. This was about getting to a full concept without spending too much time. It's not the best work I've done, but I practiced to sticking to a concept, doing it in a timely manner, while also exploring and learning, which is why I created this video. Giving yourself constraints and emulating a client project can be a big help towards becoming a better motion designer, in my opinion. It sure has helped me. I hope that someone gets some value out of this. There's a lot to talk about. I had to choose to focus on something. I will create some shorter videos where I focus a bit more about the technical aspect of things, with just some quick tips where I focus on a specific scene or technique I used. So make sure to subscribe if you want to see that. Oh yeah, and if you're in the process of learning Cinema 4D, I have created this tool on my website where I have like a collection of videos sorted by categories. So if you want to learn Cinema 4D or After Effects, I think that you might find it helpful. I hope so. Okay, so I want to end this up by saying that I'm not an expert. I'm in a continuous learning process as well. And I'm really here to learn, just here to share some of the knowledge or experience I've had up until this point, and hopefully someone will get some value out of that. So thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.